Hi everyone, and welcome back to Wonderful World. About a month ago I did a video where I rehoused my caribena versicolor tarantula into this new vivarium. And putting Peanut in a very large terrarium was somewhat of an experiment for me. And I see all the time that people keep tarantulas in very small enclosures. A lot of care guides for tarantulas recommend an enclosure size for a tarantula that is 2 times the length of the tarantula's leg span. And they give various reasons for that, such as a tarantula needs to be in an enclosed small space to feel safe and secure, or that they rarely venture far from their webs, or if you put a tarantula in an enclosure that's too large, they'll have difficulty finding their food. But I've wondered if that's really true. Now, as a disclaimer, I'll tell you that I mostly keep reptiles and amphibians, and I'm not an expert on caring for tarantulas. I have a lot more experience with reptiles. So I actually approach caring for a tarantula with a little bit of a bias towards keeping reptiles. It might not be anthropomorphism, but it probably is reptilepomorphism, which I realize is not a word, but I think you know what I mean. How many times do we hear people say in regards to reptile enclosures that bigger is always better? So I've wondered if bigger is always better might apply to tarantulas as well. I think that would definitely not be the case for tarantula slings or spiderlings. They need a certain level of humidity, and being able to control the humidity in a smaller enclosure and being able to drop their food right in front of them would make a smaller enclosure the right size for a spiderling or juvenile tarantula. I do wonder though that while it's less expensive and takes less space to keep tarantulas in small enclosures, has something evolved in the tarantula keeping hobby for tarantula keepers to keep tarantulas in smaller enclosures so they can have more and more tarantulas? I do see that a lot of tarantula keepers like to keep tens, if not hundreds, of tarantulas in their collections. And that would be difficult to do if you kept your tarantulas in very large enclosures. In any case, I wanted to see if being in a very large enclosure might change Peanut's behavior or how she interacts with her environment. And I can't believe how much that's been the case. It really has. When I first got Peanut as a little sling about a year ago, I kept her in a 3 by 3 by 6 inch arboreal sling enclosure, and she thrived in that. When she outgrew that, I moved her into a 6 by 6 by 8 inch medium-sized tarantula cribs to rehouse enclosure. And while she did thrive in that enclosure, I almost never saw her come out of her web, ever. But she molted several times and ate well between those molts, and she eventually grew to a point where that enclosure was a little small for her. Although she does seem very healthy, her abdomen is nice and plump, and she's never had any problems molting, and she survived her time as a sling or spiderling, which isn't always the case with the Vicularia species. But at this point, I did notice that she had kicked all of the hairs off her butt and wondered what could have caused her stress to do that. It would have been fine at this point to move her to an 8 or 12 inch wide arboreal enclosure, but instead I put her in this 18 by 18 by 24 inch Zoomed terrarium, and I put her on the desk in my office next to my computer. And it didn't take long for her to spin up this beautiful arboreal web for her to live in. My main concerns were one, would she feel secure or would she feel stressed having so much extra space in her enclosure? And two, would the larger amount of space hinder her from finding her water or catching her food? I don't tongue feed Peanut. I just put a few crickets in her enclosure a couple times a week and let her catch them on her own. And after being in this enclosure for about a month now, here's what I have discovered. She's had no problem finding and catching her food. Although I'm rarely able to get her catching prey on video, I've seen her eating and catching her food on a regular basis. One day I was sitting at the computer editing videos and I was startled by a loud tap on the glass and found that she had pounced on a cricket. Out in the open in the middle of the day with me sitting here. That would have never happened before. She's not stressed out at all. As a matter of fact, she's suddenly become very bold and confident. While it has remained true that she doesn't venture too far from her web, in this enclosure she spends almost as much time outside of her web as she does inside. And she's not nearly as concerned about my presence. In the smaller enclosure, if she did come out of her web, she would quickly scurry back into it as soon as I even opened the door to come into the room. The other day she was out and about in this enclosure, and I put my face close up to the glass, and she slowly walked right up to the door an inch away from my nose, like she was curiously checking me out. And she's coming out and hanging out in every bit of this large enclosure. By the way, although I have gotten a couple of jumping spiders and a few praying mantises, and I have had an urge to get more tarantulas, I think I deserve some credit for resisting the addictive urge to get more and more tarantulas. I really wanted to take the time to focus on Peanut for a while and watch her grow, knowing that my husbandry for her is correct before getting another tarantula. But although I haven't decided what species to get, I'm pretty sure there will be another tarantula for me in the near future. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on what species I should get if you'd like to leave a comment below. So for answering the question, is bigger always better for tarantulas? This is just an experiment with one tarantula, but so far I'm leaning towards yes. I kept Peanut's vivarium fairly simple and didn't put in a drainage layer or plants, but I hope one day in the future to build an epic planted vivarium for a tarantula. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a like and please consider subscribing to the channel. I have a lot of excellent things planned for future videos, so if you ring the notification bell, you won't miss any new videos when they're available. And until the next video, I look forward to seeing you again soon.